Hey everybody, so in the course of uploading my last video, I learned that the Daily Wire has acquired the rights to Ayn Rand's novel Atlas Shrugged. Now, those who have followed my channel for years will know that I spent an extended period of my life basically being a Randroid. I was a massive Ayn Rand enthusiast, and Atlas Shrugged was one of my favorite novels. I still appreciate the book from a literary standpoint, and there are ideas that Rand has that I agree with. That said, I've moved on from being a being an ardent adherent to Ayn Rand, and so learning about this, it's amazing to me how ultra right-wing social conservatives keep trying to claim Ayn Rand as one of their own. And the Daily Wire is a perfect example of this. Ayn Rand's worldview could not be more removed from the values espoused by the Daily Wire. So, those, again, who are familiar with my channel will remember that ages ago, there were these three heinously bad adaptation attempts at, or there was a heinously bad attempt at adapting Atlas Shrugged as a set of three movies, one for each segment of the novel. It was that adaptation was not done by any major studio, or really any studio at all. It was produced and financed as one rich man's vanity project, and as such, it was just a hilariously inept attempt at adapting an epic novel that failed on many, many levels. Probably the only good thing that it did was it brought us some now beloved. It gave us some exposure to some now beloved acting talents like Taylor Schilling and Patrick Fabian and people like that. They got definitely a leg up in terms of their on their resumes by being in that movie. I shouldn't say they got a leg up, but they got like some early exposure that later parlayed into mainstream success. Taylor Schilling with Orange is the New Black, and Patrick Fabian with Better Call Saul. And so anyway, so there were some little things like that, but anyway, I did a video at the time that those movies were coming out called Why the Atlas Shrugged Adaptation Has Failed and Will Continue to Fail, and I just went through with my red pen and underlined every single example of why these movies were failing to encapsulate Ayn Rand's worldview. And so once again, with the Daily Wire acquiring the rights to Atlas Shrugged, we find ourselves once again with an ultra-right, basically the entertainment arm of an ultra-right-wing authoritarian think tank trying to adapt Ayn Rand and by extension claim Ayn Rand and Atlas Shrugged as one of their own. So, to be clear, they are doing a few things better. First of all, the Daily Wire does now have a track record of demonstrating that they can make movies, reasonably high quality movies in terms of their production value. I've seen the only one of their products I've sat and watched all the way through is the What is a Woman documentary. And, again, it is not, whether you agree with it or not, it is a competently made documentary from a technical standpoint. But they have also proven, I've not watched them myself, but I've seen positive reviews of their feature film content, their fictional movies, if you will. The first one they did was some kind of Western, and they've had done some. No, that was a later one. First, they did like some thriller, Hitchcockian type thriller stuff and everything. So they've proven that they have a track record of being able to deliver this kind of content. And what they're doing, it's a very savvy business move. People have been reviewing their reviewing their fictional feature film content and pointing, and the response seems to be, I was expecting it to be a just a right-wing sermon, but it turns out it's just a regular, decent movie, for better or for worse. And it's very wise and very savvy of the Daily Wire to do that, because they realize that woke Hollywood is in the business of churning out not entertainment, but rather woke sermons, and is completely unable to muster the self-awareness necessary to figure out why these woke sermons are not making money. But anyway, so they are just providing good old-fashioned entertainment, and that's a very wise, very savvy business move to hook people into seeing the propaganda content that they want to get out, their documentaries and that kind of thing. Anyway, the thing is, and also I noticed another thing they have going in their favor in this is that I noticed somewhere in one of the things I read that they are going to be adapting it as a limited series rather than trying to make one feature film out of it. And the previous Atlas Shrugged attempt at a film adaptation, they did 3 movies based on the 3 parts of the novel, and the movies were released years apart with completely different casts every single time, and a script writing that consistently betrayed the values and ideas of Ayn Rand in the extreme. And that's what I want to focus on, because we have to realize that while the Daily Wire is in their fiction film department producing these kind of apolitical, morally neutral entertainment vehicles, and intentionally so, they're not going to produce anything within that what they're ultimately producing is things that don't preach at you. But they're not going to produce anything that defies their core values. You're not going to see a pro-abortion movie. You're not going to see a movie that argues that the nuclear family does not matter. You are not going to see You're not going to see a movie that argues that the press should be so radically unregulated that pornographers should face no consequence for their publications whatsoever. Those are just 3 examples, but they're very important examples because all of those are Ayn Rand's values, were values espoused by Ayn Rand. Take the abortion thing, for example. That was a crucial part of her worldview. That was not a passing issue. She was on the record saying that was one of the primary reasons why she would not get behind the candidacy of Ronald Reagan. And so you have an author who is pro-choice. You have an author who is an atheist. And you're not going to see Daily Wire advocating atheism in any of their content. You're not going to see the Daily Wire advocating for the dissolution of the nuclear family. You're not going to see Daily Wire advocating that people don't have a responsibility to get married and have children. These are the core values of the Daily Wire, and they run so extraordinarily contrary to Ayn Rand's worldview that it is going to be virtually impossible for them to adapt Atlas Shrugged accurately. Is the Daily Wire going to is the Daily Wire really going to depict the wantonly and lustfully adulterous sex life of Dagny Taggart? Probably not. Are they going to have John Galt sit there and lecture everybody at length on how a belief in God is fundamentally irrational? Probably not. Are they going to Are they going to have characters talking about how you should decide for yourself whether or not you're going to have children and you don't owe society children just because you're capable of having them? Probably not. And to that last point, for example, Matt Walsh, who is kind of the after Ben Shapiro, I think Matt Walsh has kind of emerged as Ben Shapiro's bottom bitch, and so he's kind of like the most visible talking head on the whole program after Ben Shapiro, and he is constantly, if you watch his videos, telling young men that they have this moral responsibility to society, to God, and to themselves, to go find a woman, get married, and start cranking out babies. That is one of his main points of view, or main pieces of proselytization out there. One of his main points that he is consistently and vehemently trying to make. In fact, one of the things that really makes the veins pop out on his forehead is when he reads content created by people who are saying that they want to remain child-free and they don't want to have children, and they feel like they're better off having children. He starts railing specifically about them being selfish, and he loves to complain about people being selfish. That's his ultimate smackdown for anybody that does not want to pursue his very rigidly puritanical worldview for what a family ought to be and how people ought to live. He admonishes them passionately and belligerently and aggressively for being selfish. One of Ayn Rand's most enduring nonfiction works is called The Virtue of Selfishness. She was completely devoted to the concept of rational self-interest. And she was on the record saying that she did not regard the nuclear family as being important. And she did not have any problem whatsoever with men and women placing their careers and making money above having children, to the exclusion of having children if they so desired. And she herself never had any children, and she certainly had a very atypical family of her own. Her husband was a chronically unemployed actor who she financially supported, and and as a result of that, he had no real basis for disagreement when she decided to start sleeping around with boy toys. So there is virtually nothing about Ayn Rand's worldview, about her lifestyle, and about the content of the novel Atlas Shrugged that aligns with the Daily Wire's worldview. The Daily Wire is not in favor of unregulated free markets. Yes, they are they are generally in favor of business and the success of private industry and that sort of thing, as conservatives usually are, but that alone does not place you within the province of Ayn Rand's very radical worldview. Spoiler alert for anyone who cares, but one of the very last things that happens in Atlas Shrugged is when all of the wealthy businessmen and scientists and inventors and artists and everything, and brilliant artists and innovators and all those people that left society to allow it to collapse so that they could return and rebuild society in their image. They are one of the last things you see is those people discussing a few people from that collective of people that left society to collapse. A few of them are sitting there drafting a new constitution with an amendment that says that Congress will pass no law respecting an establishment of business. That is completely outside the purview of the Daily Wire's worldview. They are absolutely in favor of business regulations. They're absolutely in favor of having government regulatory bodies that can dictate what you can and cannot publish. They are in favor of all kinds of business regulations. They could not be more removed from Ayn Rand's worldview if they tried. And bringing it back to people like Michael Knowles and especially Matt Walsh, these guys who openly and proudly tout their support for a theocratically authoritarian worldview. Matt Walsh self-identifies as a theocratic fascist, and he does not say that lightly. His worldview is completely in line with that. He favors, in my previous video, I talked about how he favors public executions, which is attacked by which the government can impose an awareness of its authority over the citizenry on people. He talked about in his video about the Christmas drag show controversy. He is not even in favor, ultimately, of consenting adults being allowed to attend shows like that. So these people, these rabid authoritarians, as one person, I've quoted it, I don't remember who originally said it, but it's very accurate. The Daily Wire is basically 30 Catholic homeschool kids and their Hasidic leader. And that's the people that are going to accurately portray Ayn Rand. My God, when I was an atheist, Ayn Rand was one of the people that convinced me to become an atheist. And the very idea that they are going to allow even 5% of the worldview that is in this book to be accurately portrayed is laughably absurd. People who believe in authoritarian regulations imposed by a religiously based theocratic government are not in line with Ayn Rand. I did a video about, one of my videos recently was called Michael Knowles Doesn't Understand Freedom. And in that, one of the things I talked about was that he really and truly believes that men who wear women's clothes, he argues, should be arrested. And his attitude, he said, he did this thing. He sounds like, I pointed out that he sounds like an authoritarian Jerry Seinfeld, but in the video he said, what we need to do is say, no, we're not going to let you do that. No. And he talks about having people who don't wear gender appropriate clothes, even in a completely benign non-sexual context, having them arrested and imprisoned for not wearing gender appropriate clothes. Yeah, that level of government regulation is not in line with Ayn Rand. So what I predict is that, once again, just like with the previous failed attempt at adapting Atlas Shrugged, this will probably have higher production values than that previous nonsense adaptation did. It will probably be more internally consistent. They will probably use the same cast for the entire run of the series. It will probably be better made from a technical standpoint, but as far as actually portraying Ayn Rand's worldview, fuck no.